Hi, everyone, and welcome to the webinar for our Health Tech and Space Sprint presented by BryceTech. My name is Laura Murphy, and I'm here to sort of MC and take us through some of the information about the sprint today. And then we'll get to hear from our experts, Jason and John from BryceTech, who can share a little bit more about some of the details and ins and outs of what we're expecting and looking for from applicants this time around. And I just want to go over some of the ground rules. So we just want to make sure everyone stays on mute just for the benefit of the group. And then if you have questions, we would love to answer those. That's sort of a big part of what this whole gathering is about. So please feel free to drop them in the questions tab on your GoToWebinar control panel or put them in the chat function, and we will get to those as soon as we're done with presentations. And anything we don't get to or can't answer for some reason, we will absolutely follow up with you about those questions after the fact. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. So this is what we're going to do. We'll just talk a little bit about the challenge itself. We'll go over the timeline, how you actually apply, why should you apply, and if you need to contact us, how to do that, and then we'll hear from BryceTech. So to start out, we are seeking emerging technologies and new concepts that leverage the space environment to transform health for astronauts or terrestrial populations. So not exclusively astronauts, but it is pretty cool. We're looking at health tech for astronauts. And we'll hear a little bit more about the ins and outs of the tech and what's in scope or maybe what's out of scope when we hear from BryceTech. But anyone in that space, to consider that, you may have a technology you never thought was for astronauts or for space, but it might be really a perfectly suited technology actually when you think about various applications and just trying to change your way of thinking about it a little bit. So consider multidisciplinary approaches to this challenge. So when you think a little bit more about it, your solution should either be intended for use in space, it should take advantage of some aspect of the space environment, right? One of those things, but you don't have to have already used it in space previously. We're not expecting you to have already taken it and have results. And even any maturity level is great. So really early stage concepts are welcome. We welcome ideas from academics. So if you're doing research and you have something you think would be a great fit here, that's also welcome. And below are some of the, listed on this slide, are some of the areas that we think might make sense when you think about, again, sort of that multidisciplinary approach. So if you have a biotech company or startup or solution or idea, even bioprinting, biomanufacturing, diagnostics, microgravity grown organs, pharmaceuticals, sensors, telehealth, and remote monitoring. So consider how all of those may apply if you do any of those things now. And that also isn't an exhaustive list, right? So there could be more things, but that's just to get you thinking about how expansive this might be. So timeline, we are open. It has been open, but we closed the application process on April 14th. So you've got to have everything in to us by then. It's a fairly straightforward form on the challenge website, and I'll pop that URL up toward the end here. And then in late April, we'll notify finalists. But if you're serious about the challenge, you should earmark the dates June 19 through 21, because on one of those dates, the finalists will get to pitch at TechConnect World Innovation Summit in Washington, D.C., and that's where you actually sort of the big dance at the end of this. You get to meet BryceTech and their partners, and that's a big reason to get involved. So that is what we're looking at for timing. So just earmark those dates when you apply. This is the URL to apply. Make sure you kind of jot that down if you don't already have the site. This will take you there. And don't forget, it's by the end of day, April 14th. In fairness to others, we aren't flexible past that. So be sure that you get everything in by the end of day, or I should even say, the following morning, depending on your time zone. But just make sure it's in by midnight where you live, and we'll see that timestamp. So why should you apply? There's a lot of great reasons. You could impact the health of astronauts, so that's a pretty big one, right? But all of when you think about just some of the nitty gritty, all of the top solutions are going to present to an audience of of experts. And so that starts with BryceTech, but there's lots of folks that they're going to bring in and that we're going to bring into the panel to make it diverse and really interesting for presenters. So you could easily be up on stage and be talking to your next partner, whether that's for funding or, you know, to advance your technology in some way. There's a lot of folks, you know, when we do this kind of thing where you might get really great advice from someone that's in the audience, that's on the panel. They might connect you to someone else. So you just never really know where that might end. And those could be government people, but also venture capital firms, often corporates, you know, other corporates and other partners sit on our panel. So just consider where that might go and the opportunities that'll be just in the room, just from you taking the stage. And then BryceTech is going to facilitate networking. So they have a pretty expansive private and public sector network of clients, and they're going to want to create opportunities for you to collaborate with them. So that's a huge reason they're doing this. And then finally, ATI, which is TechConnect, is a part of Advanced Technology International. So our consortia and the network that surround it really represent 20 billion in contracting authority. And so that means, you know, there are all kinds of projects underneath ATI's, you know, umbrella that they're responsible for finding solutions for and plugging in solutions for. And your solution might be a really perfect fit for that and maybe able to tap into some really significant federal funding. Nope. So if you have any questions just about and beyond this webinar, obviously we hope you get them answered here today, but if you have any questions related to the challenge, please don't hesitate to reach out to us via email at challenge@techconnectventures.com. We're also always active on social media. So Twitter, it's TechConnect360, or LinkedIn, look up TechConnect, and we are happy to connect with you there and answer your questions. So don't hesitate, even if it's not here today, but I will remind you, if you have operational questions, ask them now. We'll do my best. I'll do my best to answer them. We'll do our best to answer them, and we'll get things rolling for you so you can submit your strongest possible application. So without further ado, I will introduce John from BryceTech, who is going to present a little bit, and he's going to tell us more about what they're looking for, how you can succeed in your application process, the kinds of technologies that might be a real win, and speak more to that side of things. So John, I'll let you take it away.
Great, thank you very much, Laura. So good day, and welcome all of you. I'm excited about this opportunity and working with Laura at TechConnect and ATI to bring this sprint is really an exciting opportunity. I want to tell you a little bit about first who I am. My name, as Laura said, is John David. I am the Chief Technology Officer at BryceTech, and we'll be working closely with all of this and looking forward to hearing from all of you. I want to tell you a little bit about who we are at BryceTech and what we do. And then along with me, I have Jason Hay, who is our Director of Technology Capabilities Division, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the technology and some of our clients. So start with. So BryceTech is a woman-owned small business in Alexandria, Virginia. What we do is really giving our support to our government clients in three government divisions, and in one analytics division, and then Jason's capability development division. So let me tell you a little bit about what we do in each of those, and we'll go through this. So for our Homeland Security Defense division, we have worked with a number of clients in those areas, specifically in the DoD side of things for the most part. Our space division is one of our founding divisions. As you see here, that BryceTech was spun out in 2017 from another company that had much longer history, being set up in 2001. And space was that integral part of that spin out. Since then, we have grown also into the health side of things, where we work primarily with Health and Human Services. And excuse me. So there is and then, so the last division that I want to talk about is the analytics division. We do a lot of studies and analysis there. Those are primarily for some of our government clients, but also we have some commercial clients there about a 50-50 split for that particular division. What we do is provide that service to our clients on helping them to find technologies, to develop those technologies, to run technology programs. And so a big piece of what BryceTech is about is all those technologies. And that's where Jason's division is really important, is as the director for our technology capability development. Let me pass this over to Jason so he can talk a little bit about what we do there. Jason, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, John. So I'm Jason Hay, Director, Senior Technologist, Program Manager. I wear many hats at BryceTech, but really what I'm here for is to try and give you an idea of why we're here and hopefully why you are. We have a wide variety of clients that we support that are interested in emerging technologies and technologies that aren't within their typical ecosystem. We have clients like the Innovation and Modernization Office within USD&E, HCORE within HHS, you see GPO there. These are organizations that are constantly trying to face challenges, some of which they're able to tackle with in-house or related organization development, some of which they're looking for a technology surprise, an idea from outside that they can pull in and adapt and use to address whatever their critical challenges are. And I'll leave it to your imagination for those organizations to figure out their gaps at the moment. One of the valuable services that we provide is we help create that bridge, that connection, very much with understanding the goals and capabilities that those organizations need, translating them in a way that is going to be accessible to developers that are often small businesses, maybe startups, maybe seedling firms are still trying to find their idea, and create that connection and pathway to get those two entities meeting and hopefully working towards a common goal. So with that in mind, we have a challenge on the interface of space and health. Next slide, please, John. There we go. So Laura had mentioned earlier that it's a multidisciplinary, and it's really true. This is a very broad topic that we're looking at and a very broad challenge. Anything that has to do with the interface of space and health could potentially be in scope and of interest. We want to try and identify those emerging capabilities or technologies that either leverage the space environment, and when we say space environment, most people think the microgravity environment and properties associated with zero gravity, but there's a bunch of others: vacuum, exposure to radiation, isolation, a whole wide variety of unique laboratory factors that you can take advantage of in the microgravity environment to improve human health, be that human health through new pharmaceuticals, new ways of doing diagnostics, new ways of treatment on Earth, as well as leveraging any human health technologies that apply to astronauts flying in space. And this includes NASA astronauts for government agencies, or the new breed of commercial astronauts that are on commercial LEO platforms that have been planned for the future. We have a wide variety of technology examples here. This is not intended to limit any of the creativity or ideas. We really would be interested in anything you think might fit in this interface. Some examples to just get the idea flowing. Feel free to branch out. We have seen a lot of development recently, and frankly over the past several decades since the ISS was established, trying to leverage the the microgravity space for manufacturing by taking advantage of zero gravity. You see protein crystal examples. There's probably some news that you may have seen recently about pulling glass fibers and getting high quality fibers for telecommunications. There have been interest in printing organs, three-dimensional organs, or organs on a chip that allow you to get more information about how the body functions in an environment where gravity has been removed from the equation. There's many more that we could get into here. I had already mentioned that this is more than just the microgravity space. There is exposure to radiation and forced mutation, isolation, fully closed ecosystems required for human health and support, all of which potentially could have terrestrial applications. And we'd be very curious of any of your thoughts around that pathway. On the other side of the equation, there is new technologies and improved diagnostic tools that have been leveraged for human health. They're applying to some of our other clients, say the Defense Department. For example, the Space Force is currently looking at wearables as a primary source of getting diagnostic data and improving their human health. This applies directly to the astronaut space, and we'd be interested to see how that would pull in and feed into our NASA clients. I would be remiss if I left with you thinking that we're only looking at health technologies, because there's a lot of cross-cutting capability here that is necessary for both sides of this equation. The example that you can probably see on the chart with the wearables, while that's good and important for diagnostic testing of astronauts, the actual article that was pulled from, and all these images are credit to NASA, was a NASA JPL study that looked to develop a new type of Wi-Fi reflector, significantly reducing the power requirements necessary for connection to a Wi-Fi network. This is important for long duration monitoring in space, but a wide variety of other terrestrial technologies. So keep some creativity there. Think about ideas that maybe you weren't even targeting either space or health, but there is a possibility that you can pull it in here. We're happy to look at any and all of your ideas and work from there. That's what I had prepped. I was really hoping this could be a dynamic conversation and Q&A. If you would like, I'm more than happy to authenticate or read out of the NASA budget, but I think there's probably better uses of our time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jason and John. That's super helpful. And I think this gives a good sense of where you want to see things head. Can you give an idea of what happens when the technology leaves the challenge? You know, what's your like best case scenario for someone that pitches, and where does it end up? You know, what's the potential there?
John, you want me to grab that one?
Yeah, please.
All right. There are probably multiple best case scenarios. And frankly, it's not to be cheeky, it really depends on where the technology stands. In some cases, we'll see relatively mature commercial technologies, maybe something that's already off the shelf that can be adapted or tweaked with just operations or a new implementation method that applied to one of our clients. We bring that directly in, see if there's a connection there, see if there's a good overlap with their gaps, and then there's potentially a rapid acquisition or transition pathway. Now, we're C to support contractors, we're not in control of that part, but we can make that connection and see if there's something valuable there. The other side of that equation is the development. Many of our clients are program offices or resource sponsoring offices that are looking for innovative capabilities that meet their gaps. And we're constantly looking for technologies, doing technology scouting, creating reports, and informing them about the state of the art that's out there. So part of this activity, talking to you guys and any of the responses that we get back, would feed into those reports, get into the hands of our clients, and help them make better technology selection decisions.
Great. Can you tell me a little bit about, we have a question from Bryce. Can you explain the consideration of IP ownership? You know, can you talk a little bit about IP and how that might be impacted?
Sure, and I'll take this one, Jason. So one of the important things is that BryceTech is not a developer of products. So we aren't interested in holding IP for anyone else or taking other people's IP. We are interested in having our clients, whether they're government or commercial, get the best technologies to them. So for our perspective, your IP is your IP. For the government's perspective, there are some government use rights that they would like, but that comes down to that conversation with the government. So we're really here to help facilitate getting the right technology to the right user in the long run, and getting those developed for the better of everyone, actually.
Okay, great. And we kind of talked a little bit about, you know, who's in scope and out of scope in terms of development level, but can you clarify that a little bit more? And maybe even if you have any of your clients in mind without naming them, but are you able to say if there's anything specific in terms of development level that really is in scope or really is hot right now, and then maybe anything that less so, or, you know, where does it land? What's the ideal sweet spot for technology development, and also like budget limit or range, you know, funding level for someone, maybe not so much even technology development?
So I would answer that with the quick answer first. If you think there's anything that might apply to that interface of space and health, please contribute, because frankly, there is going to be a client out there that potentially is a good fit for. Some of our clients are looking for small seedling networks. They're looking for just out of the lab, or maybe even it's a back of a napkin idea that could fundamentally transform the approach to health and improve either astronaut health or health on the ground. We would love to see those. Those obviously have a longer development pathway. We have to connect them to the right organization. It's more of a, I'm going to throw out some DC jargon, 6.1, 6.2 research that really refers to, it's basic research. It's something of trying to understand what that capability is and how it could develop in a pathway to map to those projects. Other clients we support fit much more in that middle prototyping area. They have already identified that this is a technology that is going to have an application to make a difference, but how do you package it? How do you get it into the right box so it can be plugged into your systems? It's going to work with, let's use ISS as an example, and NASA. It'll work with the existing systems on there. It's not going to disrupt. It doesn't have to be concerned about any of the fire hazards. It's a high oxygen environment. There's safety characteristics that you have to consider there. Making sure all those tweaks are in place so it can then mature and transition. And then on the far side of it, as I mentioned early on, there could be technologies that are already mature, commercial technologies that you could go out and buy on Amazon now, but for whatever reason, we're not tracking. Maybe it needs to have a new interface from a digital management and security standpoint, but you throw a little bit of blockchain security on there, and now your wearable is a valid measurement device for the military as they're trying to understand ready troops. Does that answer your question?
It may. It's a question from the audience, so I hope that it does. But I did get a follow on. There's a lot of interest around this particular topic, so I just want to be sure we get as much of the little edges sanded down here. What about technology readiness level? So are you expecting commercial results in a certain time period, or is it okay for long lead projects? Do you feel just as positively about that in terms of your chance at success with the challenge?
We do. So part of this process is going to be filtering it through and getting the right ideas to the right clients. And even if the success is not being there on the 21st or 19th or 20th, there'll still be access and availability. Some of our clients are looking for those long lead items. Early TRL is perfectly appropriate. Some are looking for more mature capabilities, so late TRL is perfectly appropriate too. And sorry to answer a question with saying 1 through 9, but the answer is TRL 1 through 9.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, Laura, what I would add to that is that good program management has a lot of things in the pipeline. So even if it's the same technology but at a different developmental stage, it's good to have in case something drops off or in case something changes and the need is there. So don't worry about where it is in the pipeline. Let's get it in a pipeline.
Yeah, that's great perspective. And just kind of taking that a little bit, we understand BryceTech's role in this. Very fundamental. We wouldn't be able to connect with these clients without it. But how much of a hand-holding role does BryceTech have as you go past that just introduction? You know, how long would BryceTech be connected in with the startup and with this relationship? I know sometimes it can be cumbersome connecting with government clients. Maybe there are certain restrictions or, you know, validation that you have to do before you can work with them. So to what extent is BryceTech involved in all of those pieces?
So we have a responsibility to our clients in maintaining a level of organizational conflict of interest. So at some point when we are providing advice to our client, we can't be hand-holding to certain providers of those technologies. We are happy to provide advice up until the time a proposal is going in that we may have to be on the review panels for. So there's as much information as we can provide, we will, but at some point we're going to have to step back and allow the process that the government has to go through. If we're talking about commercial clients, there may be more opportunities for us to be a closer partner in that.
Okay, great. I think that helps clarify that. The application asks for a pitch deck. Can you provide details about those requirements? So from an operational standpoint, John, who asked about this, I'll tell you, we're not defining that for you. There aren't specific slides you have to have, but I'll leave it to Jason and John to speak about. Is there anything that would make that a strong deck in your mind as a reviewer? Something that just kind of an insider tip, something that you think would help them along?
I could throw a nice out there first, and then I think John's probably got a couple additional details. I see a lot of things you could qualify as pitch decks, and the biggest challenge is communicating the intended impact behind the capability you have. If you can provide a clear concise description of what it is you're doing and what you're trying to do. Helm, hire, catechisms, I hate to say it, but they had it right. Focus on those key pieces, and that helps communicate to a wide variety of different clients. Would you add anything to that, John?
Sure. So, Laura, I've been working with TechConnect for a number of years, and I've seen a lot of the pitch decks that have come through. There's some really good ones, and there's some that just don't convey enough of the information. It's important for us to know the technology, and so you've got to hit that. It's important for us to know where your business stands and where you're headed with your business. If you're an academic, that's fine. That you don't need to go down that path. We really are interested in the technology. The one thing that I would tell you that I've seen a lot of pitch decks that takes a lot of time is the thank yous at the end of it. I understand you have to make sure that you recognize and represent all the people that are a part of it. Moving through those quickly gives you a lot more time. I think you only have 7 minutes to pitch or 6 minutes to pitch, and so we want to make sure that we hit the things that are going to make a difference to the panel and to the people that are in the room listening.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a max of that amount of time. So I think you're absolutely right. Keeping it tight. It's always hard to know what to distill down,
Yep.
With practice, I guess it comes. I've got a couple questions about scope, a little bit more specificity here. So someone asked, Irving asked, where would diagnostic imaging fit in? What about remote surgery? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say both of them are definitely within scope. Diagnostic imaging is actually of a lot of interest to NASA as they think about long-term human health. Let's assume Mars or long-term occupation of the moon and those sorts of types of missions. It will no longer be sufficient to try and have a quick flight down if astronaut unfortunately breaks something and do imaging there. You'll have to be able to do precise enough diagnostic imaging to potentially help telemedicine or telesurgery on the fly with low latency, with AI and machine learning and all those wonderful buzzwords necessary to promote the health of the astronaut when they're not going to be able to get access to terrestrial care. Those developments, they translate. There's a bunch of spin-offs that come from that that are directly applicable to health across the world, whether it's in underserved communities, hard to reach third world areas or locations that you don't have regular doctor service. That intersection is exactly what we're looking for.
Awesome. Another one is, what about using technology to identify motor impairments in space?
I'll take that one too.
I was going to say, from Jason's reaction, it sounds like that's interesting already.
Yes, I think that would be very interesting. A lot of understanding what the impact of the space environment is on humans is how we adapt to it and how we're able to both adapt while we're in space or the changes of gravity, the changes of acceleration your body feels through the launch and reentry process, and adapt when you get back. There's a bunch of interest in what pieces of your vestibular reflexes and motor control changes and what those changes mean and what that might imply to other long-term effects, be it bone loss or muscle degradation. Some of those potentially apply to neurodegenerative disorders that we see on the ground, and all those, once again, that information for an astronaut could directly apply to improving health conditions for humans on the Earth.
Great. Another question, where do organs on a chip fit?
So this has been some interesting research, mostly supported by the ISS. As there becomes additional commercial LEO platforms, there'll probably be growth in this area, just scientific curiosity if nothing else. But the ability to look at the biomechanical interactions and properties of an organ and the enzymes and how the cells are interacting in the absence of gravity. This is very challenging. It's something that we have not been able to do very well until recently, and a lot of it's understanding the microfluidics, the physics behind the process, making sure you get the nutrients, making sure you're able to build your organ model in a way that is informative to the science. And recently, won't name drop here, but there are a couple of research papers that described building three-dimensional tissues. You could have organelles or even at some point, future grown organs because of the unique microgravity environment and the ability to essentially print human cells in a way that allows you to build a more functional organ than you would, say, from a bioreactor or something on the terrestrial side. John, I know this is an area that's near and dear to you. Anything to add?
Sure. There's so many developmental technologies that need to happen before we get to the organs. For going back to the question at hand, the organ on a chip, really important for diagnostic work and pharmaceutical development and those kinds of things. So that it's being able to do what we do functionally on Earth right now with the organ on a chip in a microgravity environment is a unique challenge. One of those unique challenges is actually moving fluids. How do you do add growth hormones or particular items that you need specifically in the right location at the right time? Do we have the capability and the technologies to do that? Fluid dynamics are a little bit unique in microgravity. So there's a lot of developmental technologies that have to come into play before we can say I can print a retina in space and send it back to Earth.
Great, thank you. Speaking of microgravity and various applications of gravity, we have a question from Adam who said, by space, how do you view applications aimed for lunar environments versus space travel? The difference being spaceships versus habitats with some level of gravity.
Totally spot on there. So the whole spiel I gave about adaptation to gravity, there's gradations for that. If you're at 1.6 G on the moon, that means certain things to your body that is different than a 3rd G on Mars. It's a difference to 1 G on the Earth. Or if you're accelerating at a rapid pace, 2 to 3 G if you're in a spaceship that's under a constant acceleration. For this interface, we're looking mostly at the interface of space on Marshall LEO platforms or the ISS, which is a microgravity environment. There are potentially applications that would be interested in the near term for lunar landing and lunar habitats, and we'd love to see those and try to figure how they fit in and make sure they get in front of the right clients. And then similarly, if you have something that is unique to the Martian environment, whether it is combating the caustic dust or learning how to ensure that there's sufficient nutrients for humans long-term on Mars, we'll take those under consideration. That's definitely a little further down the pipe.
Okay, great, thank you. How important is it to you whether the space is crowded? You know, you kind of mentioned, like, we were talking organs on a chip, and there's a lot that needs to happen. It's obviously something's being discussed, but there may be spaces that are more or less crowded, wearables. How in broad categories, how important is that as a judging criteria whenever we get into looking at specific technologies?
So I would not put a lot of this on the crowdedness of a space. It's really about the technology that we're seeing. If there is, if everybody has the same good idea, maybe that's not as but I would say that the people who are going to be submitting have their own unique ideas, and we would look at them as unique ideas and not necessarily as, hey, there's everybody talking about wearables. There's interesting things that can come out of what everybody's talking about, so don't hold back on submitting, and that's not a judging criteria.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, someone needs to actually make that happen and operate and move forward. There are going to be, there's going to be, and I think the nuance of building upon ideas as well. How do you feel about end-to-end solution versus component solutions? I would imagine there's a space for all of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the example I gave about microfluidics in space, that there's developmental technologies, individual pieces that absolutely need to be done before we can go to an end-to-end solution.
Yeah, and on that list I provided, even thinking about something like sensors, you may not think of a sensor as a space or a health tech, but it could be a component solution. So for everyone on the call, just remember that if what you're doing isn't end to end, it doesn't mean that it isn't a fit. I have another question, and I think I can field this one. Vera asked whether there are any financial support for the selected projects. So there is not formal financial support for winners of the sprint. That said, resulting from the sprint and the connections made, we would expect that there could be partnerships and even funding. We're not positive what could result from the pitch opportunity and the networking that takes place following the sprint. So I would say there's not something formal in the terms of a prize award for making the finalist pool, but the resulting connections we hope will be able to move your technology forward in the commercialization process somehow. Does that sound accurate, Jason and John?
Yes.
Okay. I have another question about centrifugation and lab tests and technology. Would those be in scope, something in that realm?
So again, definitely in scope. You're probably going to see a trend here. I'm going to say everything's in scope, but there's an element. One of the challenges that the person asking that question may be putting on to is currently with the ISS, there's very limited space, very limited laboratory equipment. You can do that. Very impressive laboratory equipment, but limited just by the sheer volume, what you can get out, the challenges associated with up mass and down mass. There is hope that as the expands, you have additional platforms in the LEO environment, there'll be some more capability, more opportunities for new approaches to centrifuges, new approaches for laboratory equipment, whether it's on the scientific research side or the clinical test. Don't know if the asker is thinking on the lines of artificial gravity or centrifuges for humans, but NASA did test that and looked at opportunities to apply some amount of acceleration force across the body in order to see if that helps with adaptation. So yes, within scope.
All right, wonderful. And I have one more question that's just how soon after the pitch competition do we expect like activation with partners or with BryceTech, kind of follow up, whatever that looks like?
So I guess some of that's the answer is it depends. It depends on how it goes with the meeting that we have at the event, what kind of communications come afterwards, where our clients are on their pathway. Yeah, so, and sort of, I'll say a little bit of how well the companies respond to what's being asked of. So what I can tell you is it's going to be 3 days after we're going to reach out. That's you know, there's no guarantees on that. But we intend to have a good showing, and we're looking forward to our panelists being there to provide some immediate information to the folks there. And so looking forward to, you know, a continuing engagement through, you know, even after this. So that's really what I can say. It does depend on the technologies and the needs of our clients.
Yeah, and I think the great thing about BryceTech too is that by taking in all these technologies, you know, maybe there's a client that has some favorites or picks and chooses and works with one, but by knowing you as an applicant and a finalist, you never know when BryceTech, who's working with many other clients, could find an option for you later. So yeah, there could be long-term gains there. Well, I just want to thank both of you for taking the opportunity to share a little bit more and dive a little deeper with some of these questions related to the sprint. And I just want to remind everyone to apply. We are, as you saw, very open about the scope, and just really want to see what you think makes sense for the future of health tech and space. And to answer our final question, the pitch event will be held in Washington, D.C. It is not virtual, so we are still landing on a final date there, but we will host that at TechConnect World Innovation Summit. And we look forward to seeing everything that you submit. And if you have any questions, once again, you can email them to challenge@techconnectventures.com. So thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, everyone.